Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. I've been very busy working on medieval music for a play, so ancient stuff going on in the brain. But a producer friend of mine just sent me a hip hop track that has some orchestral elements. He wasn't really satisfied with what he'd been able to accomplish with his setup. He says, Chris, take a crack at it. Well, Spitfire's BBC Symphony Orchestra to the rescue, and this is what we've got. Here's the track that David sent me. So he's got this great little triplety thing that starts. Right? You hear that? That's A minor and then down to G. Really only two chords in the piece. And so the harmonic language is quite restricted. And I knew that I was going to have to expand things a little bit just listening to this. I like this texture. And then there's this little melody that's kind of important. And I think this was the thing that really woke him up in the morning, right? That little wiggly thing on the top, that's 5, flat 6, 5, and then down a step. That's I think of it as the mystery melody interval, right? 5, flat 6, 5. And then a much bigger version of kind of the same thing. His beat, kind of his loops drop and everything kind of. And I like that little secondary melody as well. And I knew I had to pick that up as well. Now you hear two related melodies. Well, that's probably enough of this. Let's look at what I did. Let's take a look at the sort of template that I built to work on this piece. And maybe we'll just play through the whole thing and then we'll kind of break it down into bits and pieces. Well, first of all, I just want you to know that it's all strings, except it's supported by a piano. I found I needed a little bit of quick attack in order to give me that percussive effect. And I wanted to sort of get the vibe that we got out of those three sections. That 16th triplet. And I'm adding a little propulsive solo cello in there. Do you hear it? And then things expand. We have that little melody. Kept it light here. And the violin sordino. Sordino means muted. Just doing a little half step and then a whole step oscillation. And then finally, things expand a little bit more. So we add the violins long and push it out. And you can hear the pianos become much more propulsive, sort of cinematically. So octaves doubling the melody on top, and a little 16th pulse in the center just to push it forward. It really did help a lot, I found. I sort of added it at the last minute, and it worked out quite well. I think those are the sections I'll be sending on. And of course, we'll have to split out those things. I think probably the long tones of violins and violas, and maybe the cellos in one stem, the pizzicato sounds in another, maybe the basses separately. But let's look at those things individually. When you're orchestrating strings for a track like this, it's probably smart to not just grab a violin patch or a string patch, but rather to do at least a couple of instances of each member of the sections. The sections of the string orchestra are violins 1 and 2, violas, which is kind of like this weird in-between instrument, somewhere between a cello and a violin, and of course the cello. I have a solo cello and then the section, and then finally down at the bottom, the basses. The string orchestra, as it's set up on the stage, is spread out in an arc, covering really the entire left to right field of the sonic world. So the violins 1 are from the first chair to the back, and then violins 2 are this part of the pie. You'll find violas in the middle, cello on the sides going out this way, and then in the far back, basses. So you have a big wide sound with, I think I'm doing this correctly from your perspective, the basses way on one side and the violins way on the other side, and sort of everything filled in the middle. And that's the perspective we get with Spitfire's BBC Symphony Orchestra. I'm going to leave it that way. May not be appropriate for some things, but take a look. So to begin, and let's hear it without the piano. I'll just mute the piano out. You can hear how the cello's pits and the violin's pits at octaves are doubled by the bass, just boom, 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 boom. The bass here, let's just look at everybody. The bass just octaves, no triplets. The cellos have the triplets, and the violins double them at the octave. Pretty spread out, but also a very effective line. And then sustained tones in there as well. You can hear the the secondary parts add a lot of thickness and richness. In fact, the original track that David had sent me really was kind of like fifths and single note lines. And there are no thirds in the chords, and this is really typical. You'll very often get that from producers. But when you're doing, say, little secondary instrumental parts, you may want to create harmony parts that double the lines that the producers sent you. In fact, that's what I've done here. So we have things in thirds, parallel thirds, and sixths that create, kind of a harmonic language. And that's an important sort of thing to consider. Yeah, so going on, that's even more important in the next section. The cello pits part basically is starting on the root, but then we'll play the third as part of its figure. Going on to the next section, we really have a lot of harmonies, things doubled in octaves. The high string parts have thirds built into them. You can see in the blue there at the top. We have first violins long and second violins sordino to create extra thickness. And you can hear those long violins aren't smack on the beat. And that's why I like to double high melody lines like that with like piano. When I doubled it with piano, it gives a little more percussive insistence to the downbeat of the melody. Well, that's kind of a lot, and I guess maybe we can listen to it one last time, just looking at everything as it goes by. That solo cello part creates the propulsion, and you can see it's got lines that weren't in the original arrangement. Dum, 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 dum. And then this walk down. Dum, 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 dum. The quarter note trill up here is giving us a little bit of energy, propulsion, if you will. And we do have some thirds in the interior parts. And now a lot more propulsion in the piano part, 16ths. Pretty cinematic. Really two really strong melodies going on at the same time in the strings. And here you can hear that melody double at the third underneath it. Well, gee, I hope this has been useful. It's always fun for me to take a piece from one style and reimagine it in another. Some of my favorite remixes are essentially sort of orchestral retreatments of things. I'm thinking of, there's a particular Robin song. I can't think of what it is right now, but the original track is this driving pop dance track. And then the remix is kind of like just strings and vocals. And they're both spectacular. They're both so great and fun. Even with a 2-chord song like this, there's always something to dig into. Well, like and subscribe, ding the bell, all the things we do here on YouTube. I'll see you next time.